How did you create your first relationship?
You can either make a change, whether that's again within yourself or within the container of the relationship that you've chosen.
Most people, men, women included, they will only begin to look at themselves when they feel extreme pain. Was it your dad that kept asking or kept expressing like, go and become a lawyer, go and become a lawyer? It's so interesting. Like your soul can feel the dissonance to that idea because you're meant for something greater. And why that is, I began to really understand the energetics behind the legal system, right? Think about the legal system and the emotion that it perpetuates. The only reason, or one of the primary reasons why humanity is not yet at a default vibrational frequency of unconditional love, it's because of this one word, judgment. Because where accusation is not, where accusation is absent, judgment is not. And where judgment is not, guilt is absent, right? And where guilt is absent, forgiveness need not be a thing. And a state of being without the need to forgive, it's purely a state of being, of pure innocence, of pure enlightenment, of pure acceptance. So think about this. There is a system right now in our current global thought form that is literally the entity of judgment. And people are asking like, why? Why aren't we more loving? Why aren't we more compassionate? Why? And here we are, like giving credence and giving power away to a system that is literally the perpetuation of judgment, right?
Yeah.
You're guilty, you're not guilty, you are wrong, you are right, you are good, you are bad. And based on what? Based on human conditions, common law, like civil law, right? It's all based on human conditions. The jury, right? Like randomly selected individuals, thinking that that is how we eliminate biasness. But when one disunited individual and more disunited individuals come together, it is not union. It is still disunion in and of itself. So thinking that we are bringing more unity, right, without the understanding of how can we actually create unity through diversity because of the existing judgment, the legal system, it just continues to perpetuate that.
You know, the idea of like lawyer who's the one that's like revered, the one that people suggest is like, okay, if you have like this lawyer, like you're gonna win, you're gonna conquer, you're gonna rule, you're safe as long as you have like this shark on your side. It's like a whole hostile like energy that's being propagated. I think maybe some of the reading part, but like pretty much the rest of that occupation, no, like it doesn't make sense to me, at least in that context. Of course, you can have healthy debate with people, which is great.
Yeah.
But that's not that container. That's not what it is.
Exactly. But the way I came across, I was taking a look at your profile to really understand, what you have been doing and so on and so forth, in order to really understand, how to facilitate like the questioning and blah, blah, blah. And I saw a really powerful like change that I've not seen yet, which is helping women tap into their body's wisdom, which is very beautiful in its essence. So share with me, how did the journey transpire and what has been happening in that realm?
The way that I moved through, like since at least 2015, 14, something in there, the way that I seem to make all my decisions is, at least the ones that are the right ones, is like this like intuition. It's like this voice at the back of my mind that honestly will not shut up until I actually listen to it. And that seems to be the theme. So for me, it was like this really two words of like somatic healing that I just kept hearing over and over and over and over again for like, I don't know if it was months or a year or how long. And then at some point I'm like, I don't even fully know what this means, but I need to look into it more. And then the more I learned about it, the more it appealed to me, but also from wow, like there's a lot to really learn here because of my and I believe, you know, my coach always says to me, we attract, and I'm sure you believe we attract the people that we're like. And so a lot of the clients I work with and myself, it's like there's like that tendency to be in the mind, to like think. And my brain just like, it has a hard time just like getting out of the way. And so once I really came into the understanding, like, oh, that's because I'm kind of like, it's like an uneven seesaw. I'm like way up here, I'm constantly here, and I'm not ever giving space to my body and like what it's feeling. And I don't even know. And I think something that when I was reflecting really came because I actually like haven't been in my body. I've been listening to everyone. I've been taking in what they're saying. So when I dove into it, I was like, whoa, this is like a huge piece. Like my intuition really knew something that I need, and that the people that I'm working with who are like still kind of stuck in this like talk therapy sort of situation. This is why, because we don't have this missing piece of like the body. So I enrolled in, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but like Dr. 𝗞𝗲𝘆 𝗧𝗸𝗲𝗃, he's like this like 70, 80-year-old man. I'm not even sure. He's just been in this work. He created this thing called somatic experiencing.
Wisdom.
So and I like enrolled in his course and I'm still in it. And it's about moving your body like around your room. Like, and I was like, whoa, this is not homework I can do while I'm taking a walk. Like, this is something I really need to be with and to fully experience. So it's been pretty enlightening. And that's sort of the journey to coming there.
Every single time I have conversations with women, you know, and like, because of the patriarchal system that has been perpetuated, and because we are currently at the peak of the age of the mind, the age of intellect, think artificial intelligence, we are so used to perceiving reality through our thoughts, through our mind, rather than through our emotions or through feelings or through, you know, the intangible aspects, right? And yet, like, women are amazing, like souls, you know, like you are literally the physical portal through which life comes forth. Like think about that for a moment. The integration of your body, it's so crucial and so essential because that's literally how life is transmuted from the 5D into the 3D. Understanding how your body responds, honoring the body as is, you know, is key for, especially for a lot of women, to really facilitate reality in ways that men do not have the biological makeup to do so. Like we literally have to tap into a different energetic frequency to even experience what you experience.
Wow. Holy
You know?
cow. That's interesting. The way that you put that. I haven't heard that ever expressed that way.
Yeah, literally. That is the beauty of the literally the physical portal that you have. You know, like we don't have it, you know, we don't have that nurturing, we don't have that growth of life within us. We are the givers, yeah, you know, in various ways we co-create that with you, but like life doesn't come through us. So the way we integrate soul, the way we integrate spirit is different from how you integrate soul and integrate spirit in various ways. And honoring the body is so fundamental to that. It's honoring the physical portal through which life comes forth, right? And that's exactly that, the body's wisdom.
Oh yeah. And I exactly as you said, it's like we've really been so conditioned to ignore it. And I just noticed that like when I do that, I go through these almost like depressive periods because I'm just so disconnected and my body's feeling all kinds of ways. And I'm like trying to sometimes think it out, or like I do think it's helpful, you know, sometimes to journal and to use your mind in that kind of way. But also sometimes you need to just like freaking like let your body talk to you. And I honestly like in retrospect, like it was probably in therapy when my therapist would be like, I think I really realized, she'd be like, what is your body saying? And I was like, not only for so long had no idea. And then second of all, when I started to have inklings, I would say to her right after, I'm like, oh, but I don't know. Like, I would just, there's no trust. I was like, I don't know, but maybe it's not actually that. And it was like all of this. And I was like, whoa, I'm like two pieces not connected.
It is the pop culture, like, or people perceive it as the hookup culture. And then there is the honoring of your body, honoring of yourself, honoring of the purity, honoring of the sanctity in various ways. So there are two groups of women in the world, right? In various ways, you know, for this specific context, we'll simplify it to two specific groups. And the two specific groups are women whom find it perhaps challenging to surrender to men, you know, because of the stigma that revolves around the hookup culture. And then on the other hand, there are women whom are just so free-flowing with who they choose to sleep with, who they choose to give themselves to, and so on and so forth. Like, what has been your experience with that? And what have you seen, you know, in the current cultural environment that you're in, or you have been seeing, or you've been experiencing?
Oh yeah, like the first thing that came to my mind was I remember I had this friend in university, and she was almost the extreme. I was just gonna say she was so like in for her, like her vision of being empowered was sleeping with whosoever she wanted, whensoever she wanted, and that for me never clicked or felt right to me, just because I knew like the few times that I would, let's say, follow suit in that kind of way, I felt kind of just like icky in my body after, and I would be like, I wasn't connected to that person. I like I don't even know what his last name is, or like I don't even remember his first name, depending on what stage of my life I was in, like especially when I was like 18. So I guess now my thoughts are like, it's so like everyone could be quite different based on where they've come from, if they grew up, maybe, I don't know, again, my old friend, maybe she grew up in a super trying to break free and own herself, and that was part of her liberation. My assumption is it probably is in some ways a little bit of a backlash, like however we react, perhaps based on our past. And I guess the journey's getting to like what really actually feels right for you. And I don't think that does look the same though for every person. There's like the intellectual understanding, I can be with whoever I want, whenever I want, and maybe even that's spoken. But at least what I'm seeing more so in the follow through is, okay, no, but it like also maybe like in this age of later 20s, early 30s, it's not like, I don't want to exchange energy, let's say. I don't want to be intimate with someone that I don't feel a connection to. Like that feels off to me. That's what I'm seeing presently. But I think there might be a difference when you're in a different, let's say, earlier stage of your journey.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so interesting because like there is no right and wrong here, right? Like everyone is on their own path. And as you said, you know, however they come from, the environment that they were in usually translates into their perception of what freedom actually means for them. And then it evolves, and then they realize something else. And then it's always a journey, right? Yeah. It's so interesting, this specific topic, because I know in my culture specifically, like for men specifically, like men in their 20s, I think 50% of them have never had a physical connection with a woman. It's a very disconnected culture, being perpetuated through OnlyFans, through porn, you know, through all of these different mediums that makes perceived physical connection seems as though it's so easy to access or so convenient. And there is this like subconscious belief that dealing with people, it's messy, dealing with people, it's troublesome, and so on and so forth. So they go online to make it easy and accessible, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And for me personally, so on the men's side, you know, the culture that at least for me I come from, of course there are two sides. There are the people that goes around sleeping around and so on and so forth, and then there are those that don't, you know. And for quite an amount of time in the men's world, there was a perceived stigma or a perceived status of, if you make a lot of money, you're a successful man. If you sleep with a lot of women, you're a successful man. Yeah, primarily that, you know, money, sex, and women. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's how the social conditioning of what a successful man should be felt like in my society, right? It was highly meritocratic, grades determine your worth, it was highly materialistic, right? It's all about how it looks, right? It's all about the luxury. And because of that, I knew deep down there was a part of me that didn't feel congruent in terms of sleeping around or having sex with multiple women, because it just didn't feel as though there was a connection or there was a depth to the life that I actually want for myself. But because of my own rejection of myself in that, thinking I was weird in that aspect, I began to create a narrative that wasn't myself in order to feel as though I'm good enough as a man. You know?
Wow. Yeah.
So there was a part of me that was simply like just creating a narrative of the amount of women I've slept with and so on and so forth that wasn't true, because I wanted to appear, I wanted to seem as though I was this successful man that could belong in this society so that I would not feel rejected. A huge internal introspection within myself to accept myself for all that I am and begin to acknowledge my value of connection, my value of sanctity, my value of sacredness in those aspects, and begin to see that those are values that I hold the most true to myself, instead of creating narrative that I actually believe that, but because I want to feel as though I belong in society, so I don't believe that. So it creates a huge dissonance in my mental reality. So that was what I went through, needing to shed those layers of not feeling shameful that I wasn't subscribing to the ideology of what a successful man should be, and not feeling guilty that I was not like everyone else, right? Or not like everyone else, in various aspects. So it's all conditioning, right? It's all conditioning. And when I begin to accept all of me and I begin to embrace all of me in all of those aspects and begin to speak truth, right? That was when I felt the most free. That was when I began to actually release the shackles, of crafting or, creating this perception that wasn't real, right? And I was deceiving myself, and I wasn't honoring myself. I wasn't honoring my life, So that is like on the flip side for I feel as though for quite a number of men in the world in various aspects.
Like a healing of you to share that for other men, because I'm sure, like you just said, there's so many that have gone through that. I'm more of a man if I've like been with so many women or whatnot. And so for you to share that, and especially because I know like a lot of younger guys also look up to you. So for you to share that, it's like a permission slip for them to also like be who they are in that context.
Exactly. It's owning yourself and recognizing that if you choose to connect with a woman, if you're coming from a place of truth and you're coming from a place of connection without expectations, right? Because like if the connection is ecological, it will unfold in ways that you can't even control or you can't even perceive, right? So going in with like truth, going in with commandment of self, instead of trying to either stack up another number or trying to be seen or trying to feel as though you belong or trying to be validated in various ways, because going in with that energy is literally it will essentially kickstart the narrative of that connection, right? Whether it becomes a relationship or not, right? And when you kickstart a narrative of that relationship, of that connection from that place of void, then it becomes a relationship where you see the other person as the gap filler, as the void filler within you. Going in with the mindset of, I like this woman, I find her attractive, I'm going to stay grounded within myself, present myself in the most truthful way. And if she can receive me in that, amazing. If she cannot, it is not about me. It's more so about her own mental biasness or her own preferences, right? And it just means that there is no alignment.
Yeah. Oh my God. This is so resonant, because obviously that all applies to women as well. And I and a lot of women I know like have struggled, I guess, maybe not, I'm sure in that way as well, but also in the context of wanting to keep the peace, like people please, kind of keep the harmony. And so therefore silencing yourself and not necessarily bringing your whole self to the party and like really being yourself. And I've been in relationships like especially, I mean, it doesn't really matter who it was, but whatever, like a few years ago, let's say. And I remember I was like coming more into like this spiritual side of myself, and the person I was with, he was like so uncomfortable with it. And like when he told me that, and before it ended, was like that worst part where you're still in something and you feel suppressed. Like it's like the worst feeling that you can have, because you're not being your fully expressed, as we've been talking about, your fully expressed self. And it's not a good feeling.
Exactly. And it's so fundamental because like in my experiences with my own relationships in the past, it's like I've come to realize that being in a relationship with someone, I want her to feel the most free she can ever feel within herself. I want her to feel the most free she can ever feel in the world. And I want her to always speak truth, no matter how uncomfortable or difficult it is, because this is it, right? Like, there is validity in the saying that your truth or our truth or the truth will set us all free, because it is freedom. Truth is freedom. Freedom is truth, right? And I've begun to realize, like, you begin to see, for what we call a miracle is nothing else but truth rushing in. If we surrender our defenses, if we surrender our ego, we surrender our illusion self, we call a miracle because it's the truth. That's what I've come to realize, that when she, like, if she cannot be her most fully expressed version of herself with me, then I do not want to be in a relationship with her, because if she's not free, then I'm not free. Then we are not free.
This friend of mine, who's her husband now, was such a healing balm for her, because he told me this, and I was like, oh, it's so beautiful. He was like, when they started like going out and stuff, he would say like, no, like, what do you want? Like, even if he had an opinion about something, he would constantly ask her, like, what's your opinion on this? Like, what do you want to do? We're like, this day is like for you to decide. And like, she just hadn't had that. And it was just like, so like, she grew so much, and I'm so happy that they landed together, because he was exactly what she needed to just like become herself again.
At the end of the day, right, a relationship is a co-creation, right? Like, it's a continual like exploration towards a unified truth. If you're not speaking truth, then if one person is speaking truth and the other is not, or the other is like holding on to various things, then no matter what happens, the decision that eventuates is never gonna be in truth.
That's so funny. That reminds me of like this kind of like funny example I have from child, like really like grade 3 or something. Because again, I always had that like, oh, let's just figure out what this person wants to do and let's just keep the peace. But I used to be friends with this girl, and we were the same. So I used to go to her house, and we would sit there being like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? And we would sit there forever. And I remember telling my mom or some older woman about this. I think it was my mom, and that person saying, one of you may as well say what you want to do. Otherwise, none of you are going to do what you want to do. And it was like kind of that exact thing, but in the childhood example. And that always stuck with me. Like, oh, that's so true. Like, one of us may as well speak up.
Exactly. And the beautiful part about it, right? Like, at least I believe in a relationship, right? It's in the co-creation of a plan. Like, the man gets to lead initially, where he suggests, a specific idea or a specific like concept or specific something, and like, with this, and then he touched base with her and said, hey, how do you feel about this? And using the word feel is so important. Like, how do you feel about this? Right? What are your thoughts around this? What do you want based on what I've expressed, or based on what you're feeling? Right? And then she gets to express, and then the co-creation happens. Right? Because it's very, very natural for most women. Like, I believe that women in their natural default vibrational frequencies, they want to be in their feminine. Not every woman will just want to go hard. And usually that comes from a wound, that comes from a past, environmental trauma or whatever that looks like. That's why she needs to put on guards, or like be strong, or perceive to be strong, because a woman can be strong in her gentleness and strong in the flow, right?
Yeah.
So like, I truly believe that women just wants to be in their feminine, and just wants to be respected, wants to be treated equally, wants to be treated with fairness, right? And the man gets to lead with command, instead of control, right? And with the expression of a plan, now the co-creation process gets to happen, because if she feels as though, I don't really, and she's able to speak her truth, how much more efficient and effective will the planning process be? Same with both ends, the man and the woman.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. And I like how you said that, like, yeah, because I actually, and I'm sure you also speak to tons of women, and I'm just thinking right now of someone pretty close to me, and she always, she'll be like, I'm already doing my own business. I'm already so in my masculine, like, all the time. And so I don't want, and so she's thinking about the future relationship that she ultimately wants to be in. And she's like, I don't want to have to also be that man making the decision in my romantic life as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. And usually, like, from my perspective, a man that is incapable of making decisions and to lead with command instead of control usually comes from an insecurity of not feeling good enough. I don't feel good enough about myself to make a decision, because number one, I fear that my decision will be rejected. I fear that my decision will not be good enough, will not be accepted. I fear that my decision is not going to be the best because of a subconscious need to be perfect. It usually comes from that place. So the inability to make decisions and to lead with command, or sometimes a man will be like, I want to make a decision, but they don't understand how to explore or co-create, which means they're too much in their like earth masculine of like, this is the only way, this is the way. Then it becomes more of a control rather than a command with the flow of like the co-creation process. So usually that is the case. It comes from an inner child aspect. It comes from an environmental aspect. It comes from a not feeling good enough. It comes from a needing to be seen and so on and so forth. It usually comes from that.
That's so, oh my God, that's so true. I know so many guys like that. I've experienced some in relationship and I just have known in just like friendship dynamics as well. So what do you say to, I know it's a huge process, but what do you say to guys who are stuck kind of there and they want to become more healthy?
So there are different levels to it. So let's say someone who has never been in personal development, have never explored down that realm. There is a lot of repressed shame, guilt, fear, and anger for someone in that specific vibrational frequency. And those are very low density emotions. And when they're triggered, you can feel it, right? Because they will act out. They will act out like in the physical form of a man, but the acting out is in the energy of a little boy with no control over anything whatsoever. The first things first is to bring that to awareness, but at the same time, they need to be willing to look at themselves, right? And usually, most people, men, women included, they will only begin to look at themselves when they feel extreme pain. That is the existing global thought form, right? People need to be pushed before they find their pull. That's what we're at, right? Acknowledging that, right? So if like someone who has never been down the personal development path, as much as you or me could reflect that to them in various ways, depending on the depth of perceived influence we have with them, because there is a circle of influence, right? Like there is like people trust their mentors more than their family, more than their friends. Like there's a certain like circle of influence, right? So if we're too close to them, sometimes they just don't want to hear what we have to say, like advice in various aspects. It depends on like the relationship and the dynamic. But for them specifically, they need to actually choose it. So it's either they actually listen to us in various ways and take on the reflections and actually look at themselves, or they will go on their journey until they can't take it anymore. And two things will happen. They will either ask for help, or they will either decide that this world is not for them, right? And our goal is not for them to arrive at that place, right? Which is they will have to go through that, right? Because like as much as we can guide them and so on and so forth, it's not sustainable for us to be the hero, because usually the hero, we think we're heroes, but fundamentally on an ecological level, it is not ecological for us to keep being the hero, because we then do not have the energetic capacity to continue to sustain the continual like taking of energy, right? And when you cannot sustain it, but they perceive you as a hero from the start, then what happens if you stop? You will be seen as a perpetrator. You'll be seen as the villain. Because all of a sudden, you're taking their energy source away from them. Without them realizing that you were the one that chose to give them in the first place. Right? Because that's when the boundaries are crossed. That's when the energetics, like dynamics, are no longer ecological. Right? So they will have to go through that, right? And they need to seek help. They actually need to listen. They actually need to be made aware of. But once they're made aware of, the transformation and transmutation process can begin, because then they actually, so there is this 3-step process to releasing limitations and releasing emotions: acknowledgement, moving through, releasing, right? You cannot move through and release things that you're not acknowledging, right? Because if you're not acknowledging, means you're rejecting. If you're rejecting, means that is your reality. Why? Let me share with you this very, very powerful concept, right? When you reject something, like whether you're repressing something or you're resisting something, you're fighting it, right? You're fighting it because you're not allowing it to come to the surface, or you're not allowing it to be acknowledged or to be seen or to exist per se. But it's very counterintuitive. Why? Because if we fight something, it means that we believe that there's something exists.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is the point where, if you're talking about in the body, this is the point where you feel shit. Like your body hurts, in some which way. You feel heavy, you feel depressed.
Correct.
Oof, not a good place to be.
Yeah. Disease, right?
Yeah.
There is that. And then when you release, it's real ease. So if you think about it, right? So what we fight, we believe, right? And belief is about worship by degree. To fight something you worship is a contradiction in and of itself. Because if you believe something, you are in essence to a certain depth, whether it's shallow or whether it's deep, you're worshiping it. You're giving credence to it. So to fight something that you are literally worshiping or giving energy to or giving credence to, it's a contradiction in and of itself. And that's why it never ever fucking works. Thinking that rejecting it or fighting it means it doesn't exist, right? Or wanting so badly that it doesn't exist. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to acknowledge, like, oh fuck, I've got these emotions of shame. I've got these emotions of guilt. I've got these emotions of fear, emotions of anger. Because once you acknowledge it and it is brought to the light and you shine light on it, then the darkness becomes light. And when that happens, you can then ask yourself, how did this come to be? Now you can begin to transmute. Now you can begin to move through, right? Now you can begin to see the patterns at play, because everything is a pattern at play. You, where you're at right now, is the best you that you can ever be, right? The life events and experiences that you've gone through have created you as you are. So in order to really understand yourself is to understand your past, is to accept your past, is to embrace your past, right? Which comes back to the emotions, right? You have to accept and embrace that these emotions exist because they have been created by the patterns at play and not because of you, right? Absolutely. And then when you begin to see the patterns at play, you begin to see how this has been created, then it really satisfies your mind, right? It appeases your mind, because your mind now I think I understand. But the mind is just full of distractions and noises, so it's like whatever, like the soul knows it, like the soul knows it, the mind just needs to be convinced in various ways. So when that happens, you begin to acknowledge like everything that comes to be, then you begin to see all of the beliefs that you've been holding on to. Then you begin to see all of those beliefs that you've been holding on for so long, right? It's like literally like the bag that you didn't know you were carrying, you're suddenly bringing it to the front and you're opening up and, oh my fucking God, I've got all of this useless shit. And then that's when you can start to release and remove them, right? To take on new shit that you need or whatever, And that's when you begin to release all of these emotions because they no longer need to be. So that's usually the process that I envision to, like, whenever I take people through or like question them or bring them down the line of questioning, right? For them to really understand, well, all of these things coming from, like, how can we let go of them? How can we release them? Because like, do you truly want to be in fear for the rest of your life? Do you truly want to be in shame for the rest of your life? Do you truly want to hang on to this for the rest of your life?
When you put it that way, it's like, no, but there's sometimes so much fear that like the beginning of that is like,
Yeah, exactly. And because of our need for instant gratification, like we don't actually realize that one fear could have multiple layers that we need to delayer. The fear of not being good enough comes out in different life dimensions. And sometimes you're moving through one life dimension at a time. It's not as though you move through once and you're like, oh, I'm finally free from that bullshit, and then it comes up again, you're like, fuck, I thought I'm finally free, and you get so upset about, about life or yourself, but it's a progression of things.
It's like this constant journey. I guess this is what life is, like constant unpeeling, like of layers over and over again. Different layers, but still.
And that's the beauty of it. Because like I believe, like, I've never really embarked on a whole journey of going through multiple modalities or going through like different ritualistic practices and so on and so forth. And yet the feedback that I'm receiving, the reflections I'm receiving from people, it's the depth of my self-awareness, but I've never been through the practices that they have been through, or the quantity or the number of times. Because what I've begun to realize is this, like, all of these different modalities and all of these different practices is for you to be more in tune with your energetic print, your body, your mind, and your spirit. That's it, right? Fundamentally, every single practice that we know, it's for us to get more in tune with us. If we choose to speak unconditional truth moment by moment, choice by choice, that is going to be harder than anything else you have ever done in your life.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so powerful that you share sort of, let's say, that simplicity of it versus you could say almost the veil of certain rituals and the wrapping up of things, because I actually resonate a lot with what you're saying, because I was just saying this to a girlfriend the other day who is very much in the sort of spiritual, uses a lot of jargon, but that's just like her natural. Actually, she's always been like that for like the 10 years that I've known her. But I was saying to her, I was like, honestly, I'm like, I respect it, but it doesn't always click with me. And like, I'm just a very simple person. Like, just simplicity seems to speak the most. And I think probably a lot of people feel that way. So it's very approachable just to say it just like that, just like truth is like number one.
Exactly. Because a lot of the times we try to create such a convoluted theory or concept or different modalities or different unique mechanisms to take us away from the pure fundamental simplistic truth of it all, right? That we do not want to face. So we put all of these fancy little things over it, you know, like diverting our attention away from the fundamental truth. Like you tell every single spiritual thought leader, like after 50 years, after 20 years of practice, over the past 6 months, have you spoken your unconditional truth every single moment? And yet at the same time, also acknowledging like there are entities in this realm that speaking full truth might not be ecological if your discernment have not been elevated to a specific depth, because discernment is so important. Your ability to discern between who can receive this information in its fullest expression and who cannot.
True.
Right? So integrating that is very, very important as you speak your unconditional truth. Because if you feel as though this environment you cannot, then the discernment will reflect that to you and be like, interesting, I do not feel safe speaking my full truth with this person or in this environment. Why? Is it because of my own insecurities, or is it because the energetics of this environment is not vibrating at a frequency that meets me in that truth? Then you can either take yourself away or you can look at yourself, right? Because if the environment does not support that, then why the fuck are you even there?
And often I think those two things can get convoluted. We can think, I guess, in both ways, but I'm thinking, I've thought, and I was just thinking about this recently, like in many times, even in friendships with women, like especially like 5 years ago, I thought that the environment was such that there wasn't space for me because they had such strong opinions and they were very, like, they were a bit older than me and I respect them and I admired them. So I thought the environment was such that I couldn't say my, let's say, sometimes opposing views. So I just, again, silenced myself. But I was just thinking, I'm like, actually, in reflection, that probably wasn't the case. It was probably more so my insecurity and my wanting them to approve of me that I thought that was the environment.
Was there ever a time when your own fears, beliefs, or past experiences hindered your capacity to love unconditionally?
The first thing that came to mind was having been, when I was 19, in like a really toxic relationship that I did not know at the time, because it was like my first actual relationship, and I like had no idea that he was like, I actually think in retrospect had like real mental health issues. But that definitely tainted like my view of sort of men in general for a while, and actually kept me out of relationships for, I think, 3-4, like many years actually after that. And then when I started going back, and I again felt that like intuition like speaking to me, like, you got to like get back out there, because that's the only way you need to like heal, almost like in the field, like get some more practice in. And so I definitely came into pretty much, I would say almost, if not all, a little more like worried and like almost on like, and like a hypervigilance sort of like, if anyone said something that I thought was going to be manipulative, or that I like thought, oh, this person might be trying to manipulate me, because in the past I didn't see it, and now I'm like super aware, like when someone's trying to twist my words around or whatever, like in those cases, like I think it did keep me closed off. And I guess in terms of the unconditional part, like I thought if someone was expressing, like, let's say, maybe I went too far, like when someone was expressing their opinion and even their advice, and I felt it wasn't welcome, I would be like, I would shut, like, I don't need your opinion. Like, did I ask for your opinion? Like really kind of overreacting because of that. And I think that didn't allow me to, be there really with some people, and even potentially walk away from some people that I thought, again, like, were trying to manipulate me, even if they were actually just trying to share their opinion and I took it the wrong way. And that, like, one thing I think a lot of guys are better at than women is they're just kind of more blunt sometimes. So they'll just be like, like, I didn't say that. And like, they'll just kind of be like reality check sort of for me. And then, in the beginning, there's like defenses up and I'm like completely not hearing it or whatnot. But it took like people, like guys often like sort of reality checking me not hearing it at first, but then sort of integrating it in my own time and reflecting on it and being like, why can I not hear someone's opinion, or why can't I take advice? Because that was like a hard thing for me for so long. Like I did not, unless it was like a context that I knew, like maybe you in, where I'm like, well, I actually sought this person out and I already know I can trust them because of X, Y, or Z. But if someone was giving me unsolicited advice, it was so triggering for me that I was like, I didn't ask for it, like don't. And so I really had to sit with myself through that, and just kind of realize that when someone's offering advice, like, first of all, you don't have to take it if you don't want, because I think that was the people pleaser part of me. I was like, oh my God, I have to take it, and now I don't want to take it, and now I'm stuck. And like, it was like all this drama kind of that I created in my mind, probably because of the past, which was an extremely dramatic, like every day there was a fight sort of relationship. And so I think just like moving through it, sitting with myself, but it took, I think it honestly, that took years. I'm not sure if that fully answered the question, but that was what came to mind right away.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, of course, 100%, especially when your first relationship was literally the definition of a relationship for you for quite some time. Like it's fully understandable, and kudos to you, honoring you for choosing to look at yourself through that and choosing to trust again, because that's the most important thing. But this time with a depth of discernment that you didn't have in your first relationship, because how did you create your first relationship?
I feel I've been in a very reflective mode lately, and like I was kind of thinking about that, and I was like talking to someone, I'm like, this sounds really sad, but I think for a long time, I like connecting with people. Like I just never found like my people, like for so long. Like it took me until my 20s to actually find people I like actually wanted to hang out with. So I think I spent a lot of my life just like having friendships I didn't really care about, but they were technically my friends. And so with all that sort of comes an element of loneliness. And so when this guy who, okay, he was attractive, he was pursuing me, and I was like, okay, like, and then, it just kind of like no conscious discernment, but also like even when things started to go wrong, which happened very early on, and I was like just so confused, which happens when people are kind of abusive. Like you're just like, I was constantly confused. I'm like, what is happening? Why is he blowing it? Like, why is he like completely freaking out? This is like my friend. Like this is like also like the closest person to me at the time, because I didn't care about any of the other friends I had. And so it was like this almost a desire for connection, regardless of like how chaotic the connection was. I think that was a huge part of it, really.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's very, very powerful. Yeah, there's such a good depth of self-awareness. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like the generic sentiment of women who have been in abusive relationship is the question of how can someone who express that he loves me so much be this abusive or be this cruel, which
that's the thing.
Which is usually a reflection of himself more so than like you per se. What is your definition or perception of unconditional love?
Do you know what? I think that you actually described it really beautifully, and I really loved what you said earlier when you were saying like the person that the woman that you would be with or want to be with, or feels like the freest version of themselves. I really think that that's what it is like both people feeling free is the word for you, or just like also like in terms of your body, just like at peace around them, and feeling like however you grow, as long as it's in your most aligned truth, like that's accepted. I think for me, that's like the most beautiful thing. It's not, I don't know, it's not always like, it's not everyone that you will find that with for sure. But if you can, that's like really special to actually find that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm calling in at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the relationship that I was in, and like we ended it in April or May this year. Like the true resolution of it happens probably around about 3-4 weeks ago, of
Oh, wow.
like,
Yeah.
because we were doing our best to hold each other in unconditional love with the breaking up. And also acknowledging that it was pivotal for how we chose to be together, because it served, at least for me, it served the crucial purpose of connecting with unconditional love. Before I got together with her, I didn't truly believe in love. So that was what connected me with that, and like understanding the relationship that I actually want to be in with myself, and therefore with another, because there were parts of myself that I was lying about, like I was lying to myself in essence. So that was a very crucial relationship for me to step into my full acceptance of self, full acceptance of my divinity, full acceptance of all of the things that I was rejecting within myself. Whatever I've expressed to you that you have reciprocated with to me in terms of the relationship, this is what I envision, Like, I believe that when you feel it with someone, you feel it with someone. There is a deep inner knowing of this specific person that you want to continue an intimate connection with. There is no such thing as like a fully perfect individual where you come together and there are no conflicts and there are like, it's all rainbows and sunshine and blah, blah, blah.
All right. Yeah.
If that's the case, then we do not need to be in a relationship. We are literally like vibrating beyond this earthly frequency, we are no longer human. That's a human condition.
Yes.
That's why we are here, right? But it is in how we choose to facilitate the conflicts. It is how we choose to command ourselves through those conflicts that actually highlights the compatibility or the willingness of both individuals to co-create a situation. Because it is always a co-creation. This person might display a certain behavior that you can't accept, but at the same time, you chose this person. So if you cannot accept this person's behavior, then you will have to find a way to resolve that within yourself, whether it's by living or whether it's by exploring, right? There is only two aspects. You can't stay in the middle forever. The true love of my life in various aspects, like true unconditional love, the true relationship, it is when both individuals consciously choose to co-create situations, consciously choose to resolve conflicts, whether the conflicts have come from me and my insecurities or her and her insecurities. Our ability to accept and hold each other through the process to continue to evolve and continue to grow is the most important thing.
It gives a lot of hope, like whether you're on your own or you're in a relationship, like, that you can either make a change, whether that's again within yourself or within the container of the relationship that you've chosen.
Exactly. And because we're so afraid of loneliness, or so afraid or maybe have a strong desire for connection when we are alone, and we are so afraid of being alone, like we choose to connect with people that are not like a fuck yeah, we choose to connect with people like like I do it because like it's kind of like it's the thing right now. And I've come to a point where like I'm calling in this relationship so much that I am not entering into like a sexual connection or like a whatever if the energetics just do not arrive at the depth that I'm feeling within myself. If that connection cannot meet the depth of connection I have with myself, then I'd much rather be with myself than with, another person. Because I know that if that connection doesn't meet me in the depth of myself, then it will only ever mean that I will always be the savior, or I'll always be like the mentor, or like whatever, or the father, Throughout your journey, what has been the most significant obstacle you have faced in realizing and harnessing your potential, and how did you navigate it?
The self-imposed narrative that I cannot do X, Y, or Z. And I guess to be more specific, like, I mean, you've seen me through this, like, especially in like career and stuff, like, especially in like 2020. And at that point in time, it was like, there was so much unconscious and conscious, just lack of belief in myself, and just so many questions, like not so innocent questions, basically poking at me of, well, you can't do this. Like, why do you think you can do this when, this is the job that you've had, as if I was like putting myself into some sort of box. And and really just telling myself that I was too young, or I looked too young, or, you know, all of these negative things. It was almost like there was a huge part of me looking for reasons actually not to go down the path that felt right. And so whether you want to call that whole bracket of like shit, just like imposter syndrome, I really feel like that's what it was. It was like, you know, and I'm not saying it's totally gone now, but now I do feel a lot more like, no, this is my job. Like even my parents are like, so what do we tell people is your job? And I'll say, you know, that I coach people and you're right. And like, it sounds like such a little thing, but like when I can say that to my parents who were just like, what does that mean? Like talking to people like you, who were just like kind of very clear and like you are a very good person to talk to. I think when someone is coming up against that, cause you're kind of like, you're just kind of like, what? Like, you're just like, that doesn't like, no, like, that's all like nonsense. Like you're one of those people who just like really holds up a mirror to people. And so like you and like other people that are in my life who have either been on similar paths have been really helpful and really supportive, or just people who are like, you deserve this, you like, I believe in you. Like having that support system has been huge. But I also just think like keeping on and trusting my own like soul and heart and whatever you want to call it, just like these intuitive hits and downloads of like, they wouldn't keep coming, honestly, if it wasn't true. And that's just like the main thing I've noticed about like your intuition is like, we're just always right. And we just have to get out of our own way so often.
Exactly. There's this quote from Rumi: intellect is merely opinion, but bewilderment is vision. Our soul, you know, we're explorers, we're discoverers. There used to be a period of time where, like, same, I was experiencing imposter syndrome. Like, am I good enough? And for me, it has never specifically been in business. It has more or less been in like relationships, you know, like with women and so on and so forth. It's more come from that place. Am I a good enough man? You know, am I, you know, and so on and so forth. It's come more so in that dimension for me. And what I've begun to realize is that the more you can accept all of you, the less you will feel like an imposter.
Yeah.
You know, like
so true.
Speaking truth is so important, because if we're able to speak our past, our present, and our future, then there is no imposter syndrome. Because if we take every single individual, right, every single individual's life events and experiences, and we lay all of them down on a singular timeline, on a singular mat, and lay all of it out, no one individual's timeline is the same. So we cannot be an imposter. Unity consciousness, oneness, right? I am you, you are me, we are all, right? That's how we achieve true freedom for all. Like, if you're not free, I'm not free, right? So if we understand that, then we understand that every single one of us are just simply different expressions of a unified whole. Right? Which means that we all serve different purposes. Yes, the purpose might be similar, but it's so different in our expression, right? That we're all going to be different in how we contribute to the greater good of all, right? So we begin to understand that, we begin to understand our timelines, then like imposter syndrome, not good enoughness, all of this like limitations that we place on ourselves because of social conditioning, because of borrowed beliefs from our parents, from authority figures, just doesn't make sense. And the little creeper that comes in all the time to take us away from acceptance of ourselves, like a little creeper, like generic across the board, is fucking comparison. It is the matrix. It is a system that's been built in this current global thought form. It's hierarchy, it's comparison, it's competition. It's like, I'm better than you, you're better than me. If you're an A-star student, you're better than a B student, blah, blah, blah. Right? So it is all of these little creeps that start coming in, and sometimes can be like through social media, blah, blah, blah. Right? But dispelling that is so important, because then you honor yourself, you honor your soul, you honor your intuition and everything that comes forth.
Yeah. And I guess the healthy version of that is like what when I said before, like, it's so great that you shared that about like how you felt, because you can maybe hopefully compare yourself to Ray if you resonate with him, and then you can open yourself, but it's different energy, obviously, in that sense.
If I place you on a global stage where your message gets to be heard by every single individual, what would you say to them?
For me, I really seem to have a voice. Like, I swear I'm not insane, but I seem to have like an intuitive voice, a whisper. So whether it comes in that form or whether it comes in like the clenching of the stomach or your chest or any form of your body, like really just trusting that and exploring that, because it will always guide you in the right direction.
Exactly. Unconditional truth can only come from trusting yourself, can only come from honoring the truth within. Exactly. Because like the truth will set us all free. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and believe in our mission to create a positive impact in the world, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our epic content. If it inspired you, share on social media. Imagine the ripple effect we could create together. Don't forget to tag me using my social media handles in the description below. We have some mind-blowing episodes coming up that you won't want to miss. Together, let's create a wave of change. Stay curious, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.